The world around us is hostile to the Word of God and to biblical values, but we are called to be salt and light, to stand for truth in a decaying culture. We are not called to run from the fire, but be willing to step into the fire. God has placed you at this time in history on purpose and for a purpose. Join us as we get better equipped to address civics and culture from a biblical worldview. Welcome to Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church. Let's welcome our hosts, Debi and Sam Oriza.
Today's topic is the age of AI, and we're joined by special guest Krista Fabrick, who's a professor at Mesa Community College and business and social media, things like that, right?
Yep.
Thank you you've been here before as well.
Yes, I'm happy to be back. You know, I'll talk about this stuff all day long.
I'm really glad because this is a topic that I've wanted to talk about for a while and trying to find someone who I thought would be good to have this conversation with. I was like, Krista is the person to talk to. So I appreciate you coming on. This has been, like I said, it's been something that we've been talking about for a while. Before we get into that, just remind us who you are and give us a little bit just about who you are, your family, whatever you want to share with us.
Yeah, so I think the street credibility first is that I have been a college professor for almost 11 years, focused in business marketing and very heavily on social media. So that is why I've had to learn all these tools we're going to talk about today, and this technology. It's been at the forefront of my industry that I teach in and that I also still work in for a few years now. And I have worked in marketing in some form for over 20 years as well. And then I am an active member here at Dream City Church, of course, at the Phoenix campus. And my husband and my kids are all involved in all of the things here too. So, and my kids are 11 and 13. So all the parents listening, if you're hearing me talk about the toddler stages and the kid stages, the teen stages, I've been there. I'm still there. So
you're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Yep. And see you at the hub at the Phoenix campus all the time.
Yes,
right?
yes. Come say hi to me at the northern desk if you're here on a Sunday morning.
You have your little spot there.
Yep.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about a couple of different things that are related today, having to do with technology and its effects on children and AI and those kind of things. Just like anything else, it's a tool, right? So it's just like money, right? It's not inherently good or evil in and of itself, right? It's a tool. It's created by men that can be used in different ways. And so it's more about the uses of it and the effects of it that we need to look at. Not saying that it's just, you're obviously not anti-technology because you work in that arena. I'm not either. I use a lot of technology in what I do as well. But there are some really concerning things related to it that I think are not really being talked about. And so that's kind of what we want to do today is talk about some of those things. So the first thing, this is really what prompted this, was I had seen a study. I guess it came out a month or so ago,
I think. It's been very recent.
It's been very recent. MIT, right, which is it's one of the most reputable, as far as especially with technology issues, right, had done a study on the effects of ChatGPT on what it was called Your Brain on ChatGPT, which I thought was interesting because it was like your brain on, growing up in the 80s, 90s, it was like, this is your brain on drugs. It was like frying the egg and the thing. And that's what this evoked in me when I read that title. I'm like, Your Brain on ChatGPT. This is accumulation of cognitive debt when using AI for essay writing. So they did this study, right, that they was like, I think they had 3 groups, and they had some of them using AI and other ones not using AI, and one's starting off with it and then not using it, and the effect that it had on your ability to think. These were adults, right?
Yes.
Which is even more terrifying that it was adults. Oh my gosh, I read this and I was like, okay. And it wasn't that long of a time period, was it? Do you remember?
I don't remember the exact time period, but I do know that it was, I think it was back to back. So I think it was just over a few hours.
It wasn't a very long thing, but they, and the results were pretty startling. They're not surprising to me, but they were pretty startling. I don't know if you want to share your thoughts on it. We can get into some. I do have the abstract in front of me as well, but it says 54 participants. I'm reading right here, 54 participants with 18 completing session 4. So, and
so the first thing to note there, it is a fairly small study. However, this is the first study that has come out that's been like an official study with brain scans and everything to look at the effects of using AI tools like this and in this manner. So even though it's a small study, it is, I mean, the facts don't lie, the brain scans don't lie. It's not peer reviewed yet either, which is a lot of the experts I've listened to talk about this study want to make sure that's obvious. So it hasn't gone through the normal things that, a big study like this would go through before it's published. But that's because the person authoring the study felt it was so urgent because AI is becoming so pervasive in our lives and in kids' lives that the author wanted to make sure it got out right away. And so even she has come out and said, hey, I know it's not peer reviewed yet, but this is why. And so there are a lot of people that are coming out with caveats on it, but everybody agrees that this is the first study to show the facts behind the concerns that many of these experts already had, right?
Yeah, and so and it really showed that they had a change in their ability to think.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, so what you mentioned, the 18 of them, only did the 4th session. That was the 18 who did 3 sessions in a row where they gave ChatGPT a prompt to write an essay, like as if they were a college student, and then the 4th time they had to use their own brain power to do it. And they just couldn't really, they couldn't even remember, because even if they read the essay that they used from ChatGPT, they didn't write it, so they didn't retain it.
Right.
And so that was, that's what caused a decline. And as an educator, I'm going to just pipe in real quick on this, is I've actually saw my first student cheat with ChatGPT in November of 2022, the first month that it existed. So this was a student that was obviously on top of the edge, the edge of technology, but it was super obvious then. It's getting harder to tell now. But so from day one, I've told my students, it is a tool, like you said, you can use it, but if you use it to replace you using your own brain to do work, you're going to damage your brain. I've said that from day one, because anybody, you're an educator too. Right. It's so obvious that if you don't use your brain, you're not going to learn these things, and then you're actually going to hurt yourself.
Yeah. I was thinking, it reminded me, I keep saying this, and I don't know, because I need to rewatch it because I don't remember, but it reminds me of WALL-E.
Yeah.
Where it's they're sitting they can't do anything for themselves because everything is virtual, right? I mean, I feel like in a weird way, that's what it just keeps reminding me of, that's where we're headed, where you can't think for yourself. AI has to write your email. It's nice as a convenience, right? I mean, it does help where you can just generate something or generate an outline or there's lots of uses, especially in business.
Right.
But it really does, you have to be careful with it replacing your ability to think through things, because it's just like any other muscle, right? If you sit in a chair for things start to atrophy, right? Yes. And your brain is the same way, that you have to use your brain or it atrophies and you can't think anymore. Yeah. So it is, and it's super addictive, and because it's so convenient, and it's easy, and it thinks it for you, and it puts it all in this nice little package with a bow on it, right?
Yeah.
So it is kind of it's a scary thing to think about, because it is such a convenience. Yeah. It's so nice.
And you said something there that is what I've been preaching and what all the experts are saying even more eloquently than I am, and that is, don't let it replace your brain. Use it as an aid, right? Are you interacting with it? Give it a prompt, ask for an outline, then use that outline to write your own essay, right? Or if you're brainstorming, have it hey, here's my first 3 ideas. Give me, 5 more ideas. Right. And so but the short term, gain is so tempting, especially to maybe students, right? But whether college or younger even are doing it. Yeah. The short term gain, I don't have to do this essay. It's just gonna get done for me. But the long-term gain is, A, you're not learning what you need to be learning. Right. And B, you're actually, when you take that cognitive load off your brain brain is not being used. And right. And so that's,
Yeah. Well, and we do, I mean, my daughter and I both teach at the homeschool place, right? And so these are homeschool kids who tend to be more invested in their own education. You don't have the behavior problems that you do in public school, and it just tend to be a little bit more cream of the crop kind of. And we had issues there too, where you have to have the instructors are talking about, how do you identify this? I mean, some of them it is obvious. They're not, especially when they're young. It's okay, if you can read that word and tell me what that word is, because this definitely does not sound like you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not that hard to tell with some of them. But then if they get smart, they can type it in and say, write it as if I'm, 12 or whatever. Right. And then it modifies it and gets even harder to detect. And you can run it through programs and things
Yes.
to detect that it's been used, you've used AI for it, but it's like, if you're going to go through all that work to cheat, like, why not just use your brain and think, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so because again, your brain it's like a muscle, right? And your brain gets lazy. You don't think about things. And it can be then used as a crutch, right? With all that.
Yeah, and if you're using it all day long to do everything for you, you are going to have memory loss. You're going to have problem-solving skills lessen greatly. Your critical thinking skills are going to disappear, and then you're going to have to rely on it more and more, right? It's almost like that vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And so,
well, and the other thing that I think about, which wasn't something that we had on here, but in today's age too, with it's already so hard to tell truth from fiction because with AI, I mean, I was saying I can pull up and find a video of myself speaking Swahili or something that I don't speak, right? You can create the content of things that are not real. It's very difficult to tell news stories and pictures and photos. And I mean, even, so this is just a dumb thing, but it was like the woman who stole the baseball from the kid at the Phillies game, right?
Right.
And so then I've been seeing this content coming up where it was like supposedly a letter from her. And I'm like, that is not real. Like I can tell that that's not real, but there are a lot of people who think it is real.
Right.
And, it's so easy to create content that's completely fake, but looks real, that I feel like, biblically, we're at this place where it does become really hard to tell what's real and what's not real, which is not where God wants us to be as believers, right? We should have a grounding in the truth and in reality and know what things are, but the world around us is so convoluted and especially with the technology increasing that ability for us to just be completely deceived about something.
And what we need, of course, we need to be in the Word and have the Holy Spirit's help, but we also need our own critical thinking and problem-solving skills.
Yes.
To help us determine what's real and what's not. And then the more you use these tools, the less you have those abilities.
Yes. And it's good you said that too, because I was also thinking that, it talks about meditating in the Word, and all of Scripture, it talks about spending that time, right? You're spending time reading the Word of God. You're spending time thinking about it, meditating. It talks about meditating on the Word of God. And we're getting to the point where we have such a short attention span. They can't even, spend, like, it's gone to like 45 seconds or something ridiculous that the attention span is, that we lose interest if it's not. And that is contrary to sitting and meditating and thinking on the things of God and reading the Word. And so we're not able to do those things. It does affect our ability to hear the Holy Spirit, to know what's right and what's wrong, to know what's truth and what's fiction, and to have that basis in reality and in the truth.
Yep.
Yeah. So it is, again, can easily become a crutch. It's not in and of itself evil, but just to be really cognizant and careful of getting so sucked into that then, it's like any other addiction, right?
Yeah.
You can get addicted to that convenience.
And we don't have time to talk about this today, but there's even people falling in love now with like their AI chatbots, and there's the AI characters. But the scary thing that I will mention real quick is kids. 30% of kids under 8, I just heard this stat this morning, 30% of kids under 8 have some sort of AI powered like app or tool or whatever their parents have given them, like in the name of education. But there are also so many kids who are speaking to these AI powered like characters and their parents don't even know. So it's yeah. And then it's replacing real flesh and blood relationships and friends. Yeah.
Ooh, wow, yeah. All right, so moving on into that, because it's talking about kids, right? The effect that it has on education.
Yeah.
We did talk a little bit about that, about being, because you're an educator. I've been an educator for 30 years, right, in different arenas. And so this was my original kind of red flag as an educator, thinking about all of this stuff. I'm like, we already struggle with critical thinking and with the ability to take thoughts and put them into words. The writing level of the people in that we're seeing and in students is declined so massively. It's frightening.
Yep.
And this is only I think, making it worse.
Yeah.
Right. So you said something about that teachers report that kids that rely heavily on AI often struggle with critical thinking and retain less information. So you've kind of got this like fight between school systems and teachers wanting to use more technology and incorporate it more into the classroom. And then you have other classrooms where they're completely doing away with it and saying, oh, this is a no phone zone.
Right.
You kind of have this whole, like, it's been a little crazy,
Yes.
I think. Because I just saw, was it the state of New York or something
Yeah.
that just completely got rid of where you can't have phones in the classroom at
Actually,
all?
more and more, I think we're up to like 36 states have passed some sort of phone ban in schools, which I am 100% for.
Yeah.
But technology, you can't run away from that, right? So my kids actually go to school where they have iPads for every middle school and high school student. I'm still a little bit on the fence on how I feel about that, and there's a lot of research, that it's overused, but at least they don't do it till middle school, which elementary.
Because you don't even get textbooks anymore. It's all on the...
It is all on the iPad.
Yeah.
However, these kids are going to be living in a world that does have AI.
Right.
And so if teachers can teach them how to use it like a tool. I have the best example just from yesterday. My son's fabulous, very experienced language arts teacher. They've been learning how to write a big essay, their first big essay. My 6th grader just wrote a 1,000-word essay on his own in steps, but she gave them a tool, an AI tool called Hemingway, and had it grade them and tell them what grade level their writing was at, and then it gave them suggestions, and she challenged them to pick 3 suggestions and then decide if that was a suggestion worth following, and then implementing those changes and then showing her what they did and why.
Okay.
And so that, that's a way that you can use it as a tool, not replacing your writing, right? They've written this from scratch. So I think, educators and parents who homeschool and facilitators and all that are going to have to figure out how to use these tools, because I think they can be helpful. And we also don't want our kids to not be aware of how to use them as a tool.
Right.
But it is a fine line, because they can very easily be like, oh, well, now I can just do everything, right?
Yeah, that is the part that's tricky, because you can't, it's like, okay, we're not going to go be Amish and not have anything.
Right.
Have any kind of modern technology. We're living in an era where it is, and again, I use stuff, right? So it is having that, but I'm also older and have spent my life doing it without those things.
Yes.
But you have, if you're young and the only way that you know how to do any of this kind of thinking or structuring is, I'm going to let the computer do it for me.
Yeah.
Then you don't learn how to...
Well, as we talked about with social media and smartphones and all that, is their brains aren't fully formed, right? Their prefrontal cortex is not fully formed. Their brains are still so malleable. And so if they're using AI all day long to do everything for them, they're literally rewiring their brain and not allowing it to ever develop those muscles, those abilities to do those things. They're not making those neural pathways.
Yes. And I can see that in students. I really can. I can see that. Before we'll get into that in a second, because it goes with, I think, these what I call the iPad babies, right? That have that. We'll talk about that next. But before we move on completely from the schools, because I had sent you a thing talking about the AI powered.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad you remembered this.
I saw that and I was like, what in the world am I looking at? This is bananas.
So it's interesting. So it's Alpha Schools. They actually started in 2014 as micro schools by this couple in Austin, but it's grown into, I believe I have it in 9 states, 2 more coming in January. Some of these states have multiple locations, and they're calling it the 2-hour learning platform, which they actually have also licensed to some other schools, and they're trying to get this curriculum into charter and public schools, broadly, and they're using 100% AI curriculum that's personalized learning, which once again, there could be some good in there.
Right.
But when you go to these alpha schools, there's a guide. There is no teacher teaching. AI does all the teaching.
Which is just crazy. It is. And on an anecdotal note here, so I teach math. And I've seen it. I've been saying this for years. Telling parents, okay, if they're doing Algebra 1, because I teach high school math, right? So Algebra 1, doing it online, I can tell students who did their curriculum online or with, the old school CDs that you had, because they cannot do it on their own.
Yeah.
They can't do it without the help.
Yeah.
When they think that they know how to do it because they're passing through lessons, right?
Yeah.
They're passing through lessons and they think, oh, we've mastered this. But you take that away and you have them do it on their own, and they don't even know anything at all because they're getting help through it. And it's one thing, like we were talking about this before, it's one thing to understand when someone else is doing it. So like I can watch someone putting together a gourmet meal, right? And go, okay, I understand that. And I say, but then if I try to do it myself, it's not going to work.
Right. Yeah.
Not going to work.
Because you weren't actually doing it while you were watching them do it.
Yes. Okay, I can watch someone build a tiny house and think, oh, I see. That's how you do that. I couldn't pull it off myself, right? So then you translate that into these everyday things like writing a paragraph or, doing a math problem.
Yep.
And then it gets kind of scary because if you only can understand it, and I think people don't think through that aspect. Like this was something even before this whole AI conversation came up, that I would have conversations with parents and say, I really encourage you to put them in a class for Algebra 1, not do it online because they don't understand it as well. Like you do have some students who are just really good at it and they get it and they understand it. I probably would have been fine. Like I understood math. It made sense to me.
Right.
I could do it on my own and be fine and go through it. But 90% of the people at least, right? It's not that way. You need to have that feedback and so watching someone else do the algebra problem, it might make sense, but then you have to come up with it on your own, and you don't even know where to start.
Yeah. And once again, I don't know how common this is in other schools. I have my kids' experience. They're both in math classes where they still have to do their work on paper.
I make
with
mine
pencil,
do it on paper and
they
pencil.
turn that in, and the teacher can see whether or not they're doing the work and whether or not they're getting it.
Yes.
And
I do the same thing. And you can tell, like, you really can. You can see where those holes are, and a lot of it has to do with, okay, they've done it online.
Yeah.
So again, some things are, but especially when you're young and you're trying to learn those things, you do have to be, I think, really careful with that, because just because you can follow something along, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't build a tiny house. So thinking of it in those terms, that you can follow along watching someone help write an essay, but then can you do it on your own? No. Then that's where the problem, like where it all falls apart in that. Yeah. All right. So then the other thing, oops, my computer just went away. I think the next thing on there was having to do with toddlers and screen time and all that. I've also seen as just a progression, being an educator and teaching I taught in public school, I've taught in community college level, I've taught in this homeschool setting of teaching classes for homeschoolers. And it feels like there's just been this progression as it's gone on of that lack of attention span. And I think that is related to, you also see a lot of people just like handing babies and toddlers an iPad, which is a very nice convenience. Like I get it. I understand, like you're going through the grocery store, you're on an airplane, you're in a car, and you want them to be quiet, right? So it's very tempting to just hand that baby or toddler an iPad and sit there and keep them entertained on YouTube or on whatever it is. Why is that dangerous?
So it's a short-term gain again, just like using AI to do your essay for you today or write that letter for you today, right? Short-term gain, long-term consequences. And, the tons and tons of research now, we have devices have been around for a while, iPads have been around for a while, show that toddlers exposed to screens for more than 2 hours a day may experience delays in their language acquisition and attention regulation, as every teacher in this day and age, any teacher that's been teaching for more than 20 years. And most of them will say it started in 2010 with, smartphones and their high schoolers, but now they're seeing it in preschool and kindergarten and first grade because these kids, so many of them are just handed an iPad. And listen, once again, I moved to this state when I had a 1-year-old. I had no support system. I had to work part-time from home, and I had to figure it out. And I never relied heavily on screens.
Right.
My kids had a shared old iPad until Kayla was 7 in first grade, and she needed her own iPad to be able to do like a math thing and a reading thing on her, without whatever. We drove back and forth to California, 6-hour road trips several times a year, me sometimes by myself with the kids. they didn't get an iPad for the drive. Like, was it easy? No, but guess what? My kids can sit anywhere now and entertain themselves. My kids take a book when we go places. We, to this day, have a road trip rule. No devices for the first 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but they learned to use their own brains, use their own imagination. They learned how to deal with boredom.
Yeah.
And so I know, I mean, for parents who are in this, and maybe you don't know any better, no shame. Like, it is, we all do the best we can with what we know and the situations we're in. But the American Academy of Pediatrics, for already 15 years, has been saying under 18 should have 0 screen time. Under 18 months, 18 months.
Yeah.
18 to 24 months, they should have maybe up to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not new. That's 15 plus years old.
And this is screens, not necessarily TV.
It's both.
Is it both? Okay.
But the personalized screens are the ones that all the research shows is the worst.
Is the worst, yeah.
Right, because it's like when you're watching, like if you have family movie night, that's wonderful. You're experiencing that as a family. It's a big screen. It's not, like you're not encompassed in your own little world, right?
Right.
And that's a big problem. But I mean, now you go sit down in a restaurant and just watch families walk in.
Right.
And they literally will sit
Flop.
down and the baby or their toddler will immediately get
Yeah.
a screen,
Yeah.
a phone or an iPad. And that's not letting them, that's doing them a harm. Not only is it rewiring their brains and causing attention span, but they're not learning how to react in public situations.
Right. Yeah. And again, there's no condemnation for any of this because it's the world we live in, right? So it's very convenient. It's very, but I think the more research that comes out on it, the more it is, okay, we need to start questioning whether that's a good idea or not,
Yeah.
right? And is it helpful? Is it harmful? Or is it neutral, right?
Yeah.
There's different levels of things, right? And so you have, again, especially with children, with all of that it is more harmful than helpful. It might have a short-term help.
Right.
But, we used to, I remember even, again, with my kids were before all of these devices
Right.
came out, so I didn't have that option anyway. But it's like you're finding things that you're looking at outside, or you're picking
Yes.
up rocks, or you know what I mean? Like there's different
Yeah.
things, and you do learn how to just be engaged with the world around you as opposed to being... And I saw something recently about too with toddlers, and it's like when their parents are on devices too, and or babies, and seeing that
they
like that
model
lack
us.
of just like the face, the facial expressions that kind of go blank
Yep.
when you're on a screen,
Yeah.
and how babies react, they get distressed by that.
Yep.
So that's also like a factor in there. There's a lot of research in there, and again, is it hard? Yes, it's definitely hard because
Parenting is supposed to be hard.
it is. It's hard, and we're living in a world that's so moving, just fast paced. Everything's crazy. There's a lot of technology around, so it's not. Again, we're not trying to say, okay, be a Luddite and just don't have any kind of technology at all,
Right.
or to feel any condemnation about using any of these things, but just trying to learn to have some wisdom
Right.
in the operation of them and realize that they do have consequences beyond just that initial, this is a convenience, and it makes it easy because they're quiet.
Yeah.
We can have a conversation, or we can eat dinner in
Right.
peace, or
And once again, use it as
Right.
that tool when you're really in need, but don't just make that the default choice, right?
Yes, make
and
it the
that's the thing. If you're
babysitter.
today the parent that is defaulting to that, even like they talk about emotional regulation with toddlers and kids, if they're having a tantrum or they're upset, oh, here, watch something on your iPad, or here, play a
Right.
game on your iPad or my phone or whatever, then they're not learning how to emotionally regulate themselves either. So,
Yeah.
if you're a parent who today is that's kind of your MO, that you do that all the time, then, step one would just be, let's try to make it through the first, 15 minutes of a car ride with no devices. Let's just try that. And, and baby step it. It's okay. But any amount of limiting you can do in these situations of either for emotional regulation or to keep them entertained in a situation where they might be bored, if you can help them start to handle that without the device and even the babyest of steps, then
Right.
you're going to be helping rewire their brains in a positive way.
Yeah, because it's not something that it's irredeemable.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think that's true with everything to do with parenting, right? Is like you're trying to develop them into adults.
Yes.
Be that way. Okay, so let's see. I think we can look at. Well, we talked about this too with the using technology, the Am I using it as a tool to extend my mind or to replace it? I think we've talked about a lot of what we already had on this thing. Is there anything?
Yeah.
What am
I know
I
it's kind of
forgetting?
all weaves together, doesn't
We
it?
kind of like bounced around a little bit, but it all sort of
Yeah.
encouraging play-based learning, real world interaction. Because that is true too with the interacting with people, and we talked about this with the social media episode we did with you, in that, you know, if people are used to having conversations with people online versus in real face-to-face, there's a difference.
Yeah.
And learning how to pick up on that nuance of communication and reading people's facial expressions, and all of that gets lost on a screen.
Right.
I mean, how many times have you read something like an email or a text and you're thinking that person is angry, or you're misconstruing sort of what the intent was behind it because there's no facial expression or tone of voice.
Yep.
That the human interaction is more, it's more complete, right? When you're looking at that. And if kids are not learning how to do that and how to read that, they're limiting their ability to function as full-fledged members of society.
Which then comes back to, as Christians, right? If we want our children to grow up to be just, makers of disciples and to be sharing the gospel and to be going out there and furthering God's kingdom, if they have no social skills or limited social skills,
right,
that's going to really inhibit them.
Yeah. And again, going back to that, the Bible talks about thinking about things and battling kind of with thinking and choosing what to think about and think on things that are good and pure, and I'm butchering the Bible verse, but you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
Choosing what you're thinking on, and so much of what is getting online is just like feeding us things, and we're just sitting there sort of passive and not actually filtering through information or thinking about whether it's, and the younger you start with that, the harder it is to make those determinations and say, hey, I do think that the younger generations are starting to kind of break from that, because you see a lot of like Gen Z especially that is going more traditional, and they're getting rid of the smartphones, and they're having more face-to-face conversations and trying to kind of break free from that because they've seen, which I think is fantastic. I love that they're seeing it and recognizing.
My Gen Z college students are all the time saying, technology. Oh, I tell my parents to not do that for my younger sibling. Oh, you're being a great mom by like limiting that for your kids. Like,
yes.
Yeah, so many of them definitely, even if some of them still love some of, social media or whatever, so many of them they were the earlier ones that were experimented on really with all this stuff.
Yeah.
And
they grew up with it entirely. Like I was saying, I'm old, I'm old beyond that having, we didn't have to. I mean, we had a computer back when nobody had one. My dad was a teacher and taught computers, and I had one of those little green screen apples like in my house.
That's
in
the first
80s.
computer I ever learned on at school.
Right. In the 80s, we had one in our house. It was pretty cool. But so I have been, involved with technology and using it and love it. I use it a lot in all kinds of things that I do, but I also do see the red flags and the warning signs. And I think that's just part of being able to think through those things and think through them critically and not just take information as like a path. That's the difference, right? Between writing an essay and using ChatGPT to write an essay, between having a screen versus learning how to, self-regulate when you're a toddler, whatever it is. It's an active rather than a passive.
Yes.
You are an active participant in what you're learning or in what you're doing versus it just being, like Wall-E sitting there in the virtual world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Not having any...
using all of this technology, AI included, as a tool, right? Not as a replacement.
Not as a replacement for human thought, right? Or a connection with people or a connection with God, right?
Yeah.
All of those things. So, because it is really difficult to sort of navigate that, because you want to use it, and there's a lot of great uses for it, but you also have to be really careful with it. Yep. And especially like in the end times, I feel like it's just getting more and more of a thing to where you can't even tell.
Yeah.
You can't tell if a student is using an AI to write a paper.
Yeah, in the early days I could, now I can't always
It's harder. You can't tell if some picture is real or fake, right? It's so hard to tell the difference. And so it's like as more that improves and gets better, the harder it is to distinguish between reality and fiction.
Yeah.
which is scary as a believer. It really is.
Yeah, and that's where we need discernment and wisdom and critical thinking and all that. So
yeah. Anything else on here that we did not cover that you want to cover? Because
I think
we kind of, like I said, we kind of bounced around a little bit. But.
Yeah, we just, really, especially with AI, because AI, I don't think people realize, like, AI-powered tools have been around for many years.
Yeah.
And so most of us have dealt with AI in some way, but most of us are starting to use it, like the, ChatGPTs or Perplexities or the image generators or the video, text to video or whatever. But just remembering that if we let them take over doing what we do, we lose a little bit of our humanity. So the more we remember they're just tools and keep that distance of them as tools and as technology that can aid us in what we do. Think about when calculators were invented, right? The math teacher, everybody freaked out the calculators,
from the abacus to the
right? But calculators. But just the way math was taught and the way math was done changed, but it didn't math was still important, right?
Right.
So like our humanity, our brains are still so important, but we just got the tools replace us.
No, that's good. I always, when I teach geometry, I talk about how the trigonometry and all of we used to have a chart in the back of our notebook. I said that was designed by Satan himself. This chart with like every angle and this like tangent, cosine. You had to look for all these little 4-digit things on there, and because you didn't have the capability to have it on a calculator like that. Yeah. Like now you just hit tangent 32 degrees and it pulls it up for you. So it's like those things are there. It's helpful, right? I'm not saying that any of the technology is not helpful, because it is helpful, but we do have to really guard our hearts and make sure that we're using those things wisely and using them in a way that we're not rewiring kids' brains or losing our ability to critically think, which I think that MIT study is really something that should be looked about, because that was adults, that wasn't kids. Yep. And so that's, kids, I think it's a little bit easier to understand how, their brains are developing. And so it makes sense that if they're developing and they're being limited in what they're exposed to and the ability, I think more people can kind of see that angle of it. But to see that MIT study, which MIT is nothing to, it's a credible source, right? And technology is part of the name of the, school, right? Yeah. But to have that talking about how it literally rewires the way that you're able to think and your ability to write, that we need to have some wisdom and be careful and use it as a tool, but not use it to replace I was
listening to an interview this morning with Dr. Daniel Amen, who is a renowned psychologist who's done tons of brain scans, like tens of thousands. He talks about technology and its effects on our youth is one of his big passionate things. And a neuroscientist, and they were both saying is when it comes to all this technology, and there was an episode about AI, and they were saying, think about, is this good for my brain? Right? Like whether it's your children or yourself or, whoever you're teaching. Yes. Is this good for my brain health? And that, so using AI all day to replace what you're doing is, I think we can all agree, is not good for your brain health.
Right. Well, and it goes with, like the Make America Healthy Again, that whole trend of like trying to be careful about what we put into our bodies, not putting in toxins and dyes and, artificial things and aluminum and just all the different toxins that we're exposed to. We know that that's affected our physical health to where we have more chronic disease and autoimmune and all kinds of different things, more cancer, more Alzheimer's, more all of these things. But the effect of technology and screens also just in rewiring your brain. Again, if we want to be healthy, well-functioning people, we have to be careful and moderate those things that are not good for us and use them as tools, but not replacing. Yeah. Sounds good. All right, we fixed the world. We can move on. We can move on now.
And hopefully, at least some food for thought, right? Of people checking their habits and their tools they're using.
I know, because I'm bad too. Like I'll be sitting there and realize, I've been flipping through my phone for an hour, and I didn't even notice that I was doing it. Right? Yeah. It's really easy to do.
That's why I set time limits on all my social media apps. Yeah. And to be clear, I use AI. I teach it in all my classes because my students, I teach marketing, social media, business. They have to know how to use it. I'm using it as an aid to make it, things better or to help me brainstorm or,
Yeah. So start small, make those little changes. Don't beat yourself up if you're, kind of in that category, because we all it's so easy to do. It really is.
It is.
But maybe start doing some research, thinking for yourself, and take limiting the screen time for kids, and, making sure that you're using these things as a tool and not as a crutch. And so just starting with something, those baby steps that you were talking about, 15 minutes or whatever it is at a time, and doing that. So, yeah. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us on Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church.
You can listen to this podcast on Apple and Spotify, and follow us on social media to find all the info on the show notes. To learn more about Dream City Church, visit our website at dreamcitychurch.us. Thanks for listening.